Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
The Kerala government was in the news this week after it issued and then later withdrew an ordinance that made it a crime to publish any kind of threatening or abusive or humiliating communication. So my first KYC episode this week is about one of the Supreme Court's landmark judgments in which it struck down a similar law back in 2015 while relying on the fundamental rights under Article 19 of the Constitution. Now, the earlier law that I was talking about was Section 66A of the IT Act. This provision essentially criminalized sending grossly offensive or annoying or inconvenient information over the internet, so over any sort of social media platform as well. It provided for a 3-year jail term and fine for any violation of this provision. Now, the provision, that is Section 66A, was used and criticized on several occasions. For example, when it was used to arrest 2 women back in 2012 when they expressed their displeasure at a bandh called in the wake of Shiv Sena chief Bal Thackeray's death. In another case, a class 11 student in Uttar Pradesh was arrested for posting a supposedly objectionable Facebook post on State Minister Azam Khan. The provision was then challenged in the Supreme Court, contending that it infringes upon the citizen's fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)A of the Constitution. Now, just to take you back to the Constitution, Article 19(2) also lists down 8 grounds on which free speech can be reasonably restricted. You can see these grounds on your screen right now. So the Supreme Court essentially said that any such law restricting free speech, that is in this case Section 66A for example, should be covered by one of the 8 grounds listed under Article 19(2). It then found that Section 66A actually did not satisfy this test. Secondly, the court also found that the words used under Section 66A were too vague and hence said, and I quote, that virtually any opinion on any subject would be covered by it, as any serious opinion dissenting with the mores of the day would be caught within its net. Basically saying that any opinion would then be covered within this Section 66A, making it a crime. Now, interestingly, in this case, another provision was also challenged. This was Section 118D of the Kerala Police Act. This clause basically criminalized causing annoyance to a person in an indecent manner through comments or messages or emails. But in the same judgment, that is the Shreya Singhal judgment, this provision was also struck down on the same grounds. Now, 26th November marks Constitution Day in India. So I thought of bringing you this special KYC episode to take you back to this date in 1949 and explain to you how this day came to be celebrated as the Constitution Day. Now, the date 26th November remains significant in India's history because it was on this date back in 1949 that the Constitution was finally adopted by the Constituent Assembly. The motion to pass the Constitution as settled, that is accepted by the Assembly, was actually moved by Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar, the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution, on 17th November 1949. The transcripts recording these proceedings stated in brackets that there were cheers from the members of the Assembly on hearing the motion. Dr. Ambedkar's motion also marked the beginning of the 3rd reading of the draft constitution by the Assembly. Finally, it was on 26 November 1949 that the Constituent Assembly met in the Constitution Hall, New Delhi at about 10 a.m. and after a speech by the President of the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the Assembly adopted the Constitution amidst what the transcript recorded as prolonged cheers. Dr. Prasad then said that before the session is adjourned, he would like to go around and shake hands with all the members as he did first when he was elected to the Assembly. But Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru suggested that all the members should instead go to Dr. Prasad and shake hands with him one by one, and that's exactly what happened. Cut to 26 January 1950, it was then that the Constitution came into force. But interestingly, there were a few articles, including those on citizenship, that came into force immediately on 26 November 1949, while the rest of the articles came into effect only on 26 January 1950. But up until 2015, 26th November was actually celebrated as National Law Day. It was only in 2015 that the Union Cabinet announced that 26th November would be observed as Constitution Day instead, to promote constitutional values among citizens. This was also the year that marked the 125th birth anniversary of Dr. Ambedkar. On 19th November 2015, the government formally notified November 26th as Constitution Day. So the first Constitution Day was technically celebrated on 26th November 2015. There was also a special session of the Indian Parliament that year, and the Parliament House complex was illuminated to mark the occasion. Besides this, colleges were asked to organize mock parliament sessions and debates on the constitution, and schools were asked to ensure that the students read out the preamble to the constitution in the school assembly on that day. Now, with less than 2 months of his tenure remaining, US President Donald Trump on Wednesday exercised his powers under the Constitution to pardon Michael Flynn. Flynn was his former national security advisor and had twice pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. So in my next KYC episode, I explain what sort of pardoning powers the President of India has under the Indian Constitution. Now, Article 72 of the Constitution grants certain powers to the President of India. He can exercise these powers in a case where a person has been awarded a death sentence, or if the punishment or sentence is under a central law, or if the punishment is given by a military court. Now, in all such cases, the President can grant absolute and unconditional pardons to people as well. That is, he can allow them to walk free. The President can also commute a punishment to one of a different sort. For example, a death penalty can be commuted to a life sentence. He can also reduce the sentence or delay the execution to allow a death row convict to seek some other legal remedy. Now, the Supreme Court has explained that a pardon is actually granted on the theory that the convict has seen the error of his ways. That is, he has realized his mistake, that the society will gain nothing by his further confinement, and that he will conduct himself in the future as an upright, law-abiding citizen. The governor has similar powers under Article 161. However, the government cannot pardon death sentence convicts like the President can. It has been held that while exercising their powers under Article 72 and 161, both the President and the Governor need to act not on their own judgment, but in accordance with the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. As to whether the courts can look into the President or the Governor's exercise of his mercy powers, the Supreme Court has held that there are limited grounds under which courts can review how the powers under Article 72 or 161 were actually exercised. The Supreme Court also gave a few examples to explain this. So, for example, it said that if an opposition leader is sentenced, but the circumstances cry for a remission, for example, if he is suffering from cancer, or if his wife is terminally ill, or if he has completely reformed himself, then the power of remission under Articles 72 and 161 may ordinarily be exercised, and that a refusal may actually be wrong-headed. This is what the Supreme Court said. The court also said that if it finds frequent misuse of this power, it may have to investigate into the discrimination. It again gave an example. For instance, it said that it would be discriminatory where, say, two people have been convicted and sentenced in the same case with the same degree of guilt, but one is released while the other is not, on irrelevant grounds like religion, caste, color, or political loyalty. Now, the Constitution also does not provide any time limit for the President or the Governor to decide a mercy petition, but the Supreme Court has also frowned upon undue delay by the President or the Governor in rejecting mercy to a death row convict. In fact, in 2014, the Supreme Court had commuted the sentences of 3 men convicted of killing former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, citing a delay of 11 years in deciding their mercy pleas. This is Apurva Mandhani for The Print. Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel.